You are listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Hey, welcome to I Am Refocused Radio. We are here once again, and today we have another amazing guest. Today we're going to talk to Kevin Bupp, and he is the one that leads the amazing vision of SCI, Sunrise Capital Investors. Today is all about real estate, but first we're going to learn more about Kevin and also his team strategy and how they can be a great resource to our listeners. So first and foremost, Kevin, thank you for your time. How you doing, man?
Shemai, I'm doing great, man. I appreciate you having me on the show.
Yes, sir. So let's kind of start out. What inspired you to get in real estate and also be the one who leads Sunrise Capital Investors?
Yeah, that's a great question. I always like to joke and say that, I didn't really find real estate. Real estate found me at a critical point in my life, at a pivotal moment in my life. And so, I was introduced to it by a gentleman that was about 25 years older than I. I went through high school, wasn't all that great academically, just didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up. A lot of my friends were going off to school. I went to local community college and just took classes, but really no direction. And lo and behold, I started dating a girl, and her mom's boyfriend happened to be a local real estate investor. And I just, grew a friendship with him, got an understanding of what it was that he did. It was very different than my life growing up. Both my parents worked 9-to-5 jobs. They worked different shifts because they couldn't really afford like childcare. And so they kind of split it up so that, one parent was home while the other was at work and vice versa. And this guy, David, who became my mentor, basically a local real estate investor, had a very flexible schedule. I saw him around, normally when I didn't expect to see adults around, right? Like in between 9 and 5, he was out and about doing his thing. And ultimately, I went to a conference with him. He invited me to a real estate conference. Again, I didn't know anything about it. I'd never read a book on real estate. He tried to give me the 10,000-foot view of what it was he did. He owned rental properties for the most part and basically had bank loans on them and had positive cash flow on a monthly basis that he got to put in his pocket while his tenants paid down his mortgages. And that was really intriguing to me, but I just still couldn't really wrap my arms around it. But ultimately, I went through this conference with him, came back and made an offer he couldn't refuse, which was, I'll work for you for free. Do anything you need me to do within your business. I'll come here in between classes, in between attended bar in the evenings, and I'll work for free for as long as I have to in order for me to learn what it is you do and have a better understanding of what it is you do. Because I think this is something that that could be a great opportunity for me. And I think this is the first thing I've ever been excited about. And so please let me come provide value to you so that in turn I can learn from you. And we did that. I worked for him for about a year and a half for free. And I did everything, everything you could think of, from making, runs to the grocery store, just to stock his fridge, to, dropping off leases, meeting contractors, going to Home Depot, picking up supplies. I mean, and everything in between there. And during that time, I got to spend a lot of endless hours with David. And I learned his business. I learned how he talked on the phone to brokers, to real estate agents, to homeowners that were trying to sell their house. I mean, he was kind of one-man show outside of contractors that did work on his houses. And so I got to see it from every different level. And again, about a year and a half, I worked for him for free before I ponied up and took my savings from tending bar in the evenings. And bought my first investment property, and that was at the age of 20, and that was it. That lit the fire. Age of 20, bought the first one, and then just really tried to build a sustainable business out of it. And I've done that. So over the last that was in 2000, and so 23 years now. It's kind of aging myself by saying that, but 23 years I've been doing this full time. I've had some ups, I've had some downs. I went through the Great Recession of '08 and rebuilt myself many different times over again, and I'm still here to talk about it.
You have a very impressive portfolio with a ton of experience in different types of real estate, if I can put it that way. So from apartment buildings, single family homes, office buildings, parking facilities, et cetera, et cetera. How do you determine where to invest, and what is your process in making that judgment?
You mean like where to invest? Meaning like what type of asset to invest in? What? Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, I started out like a lot of folks, and again, I didn't reinvent the wheel from what David had taught me. So I just like everyone, most other investors, they start out buying single family properties, and that worked really well for me. And in my early 20s, I built up a pretty large portfolio, about 125 single family homes. And I realized during that period of time that apartment buildings kind of always came our way, smaller apartments like 12 and 24 units, things like that. And they weren't as hot back then as they are today. And so, we picked up a number of those, built up a couple hundred units of apartment complexes. And what I realized, at least back then, that was kind of like my first go around in the rodeo, was that very quickly I realized how much more efficient those apartment complexes, even though they were smaller. Again, the smallest one we had, I think, was like 10 units, and the largest one was 72 units. But how much more efficient they were with management, with leasing, with the day-to-day property management operations. They just were much more efficient than my portfolio of single-family homes that was spread out, amongst 5 counties. It's just lots of inefficiencies that exist there. Technology has made that a lot easier today. That technology did not exist, 20 years ago to really, put the efficiencies back into that type of business model. But long story short, that really pushed me in the direction of buying commercial. Once I really saw the benefits of the efficiencies that came with scale, I really put my efforts on multifamily. But then at that same time, I opened my eyes up to doing larger deals. And to me, larger deals meant commercial deals. So I bought some retail, I bought some office, I bought some industrial. I was getting flavors of all of them, just to better understand the business model of each, which one I felt I could scale, so on and so forth. And so that took me into like 2008. And 2008 was a really challenging time. I lost a lot of properties, went in damage control for a couple of years. Florida got hit really hard. Rents went down. Everyone always says rents never go down. Rents went down in Florida for a period of time. And there was just a lot of blood in the streets. And so, there became a time of reinvention. And again, you asked me of how I determine what asset class I want to invest in. I want to invest in things that are sustainable. I can build a scalable model out of it and actually make money, make actual profit with it. And so I knew that I could do that with multifamily again. I felt very confident about that, kind of reinventing myself in 2010, 2011. Like I took a couple of years off from 2008 until like about 2011. It was really just damage control, trying to not let all the pieces of the puzzle completely fall apart, like everything crumble. And it kind of did, but I had about 3 years of hiatus from buying real estate. But when I came back into it, I knew that multifamily was efficient. I knew that I could scale. Again, I knew I could rebuild the empire with multifamily, forget the single family at that point. But during that journey, I found out about mobile home parks, and I'd never considered that asset class before. And it's got a lot of similarities to multifamily. But the one thing that stuck out to me, at least back then, was it didn't have nearly as much competition. And so I bought the first mobile home park back in 2012. And I wanted to test the model. And I didn't know what I didn't know at that point. I bought that. It went really well. And no one was hunting for these things back then. So for me, I always kind of consider myself, I want to build a scalable model, but I also kind of take a contrarian point of view. I don't want to always go where the herd's going. I want to find the opportunity in the niches. And mobile home parks became that niche for me. And so that's how I chose that asset class. It made a ton of money. You could buy them at reasonable prices, and there wasn't a lot of competition for them. So I went off on a span of time to buy as many mobile home parks as I possibly can. And we still buy them today. So again, bought that first one in 2012, still buy them today through Sunrise Capital Investors, which is our investment company. But again, along that same journey, always keeping my eyes open for other opportunities. Parking lots and parking garages, came across my desk about 4.5 years ago. Maybe it's probably been 5 years now. And again, I did not know one person that owned a parking lot or parking garage. You couldn't find much information online about investing in parking assets. And I went on a journey again to learn about it, is this another model, kind of like what mobile home parks were 10 years ago, when if you knew, you knew, but most people didn't know. And so there wasn't a lot of competition. Now there is. Now there's a ton of competition in mobile home park space, but parking is very similar to what mobile home parks were 10 years ago. It's very fragmented. Not a lot of people that understand the business model, nor are there people out there hunting for parking assets to invest in. So I look where there's ripe opportunities, but also not necessarily where the herd's going full steam ahead at.
Once again, listen on Refocus Radio, talking to our guest today, Kevin Bupp, and go to the website, sunrisecapitalinvestors.com. I mean, you have a very extensive, length of portfolio. I mean, with over 250 million of real estate transactions underneath your belt, how have you been able to sustain your success throughout the years?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think having the right team around me, this isn't a one man party at all. And there was definitely many years when it was a one man party or maybe a 2-person party. For example, when I had to rebuild everything, I started off solo with a little bit of capital I had left. I was able to save, and I brought one partner to the fray, someone I trusted, someone I had done deals with in the past, and we started rebuilding literally one small property at a time. But in order to actually build a scalable business, one that could continue to grow, operate and grow, even when you step away for a period of time, you need a good team surrounding you. And so really that's from doing a couple deals a year and making really good money, having a good lifestyle, but still being in the business, to building the team around us and myself that brings talents and complementary talents to my own. I mean, I'm not great at everything. In fact, I'm great at very few things, and that's where I try to focus my time, energy, and effort. And I try to find others that help me fill in the voids where I don't have the expertise or the skill set. And so my business partner is one of those individuals. He's really helped me scale this business in the past 5 years, as has the team that we've hired over this period of time. And that was literally the difference of owning a $10 million company to today our portfolio is valued at about $125 million. So literally it's the team. That is the only thing that I can attribute that to, is having the right team on the bus.
You also find time to give back. You are the founder of several charitable organizations, including runningforbruise.com and a social running club with more than 10,000 active members, and also 72 hours to Key West, an annual 280-mile bike ride to benefit impoverished families during the holidays. I mean, man, you're always busy, but you still find that time to give back. Why?
Well, no, I just there's. When we look at it, I try to be grateful for each and every second, every day that we're on this earth. I try to be grateful for all the blessings that I have. But, even then we find ourselves sometimes, complaining about something, or, just something that we shouldn't, because ultimately what we do know is that there's many, many other people that have it way worse off than what we do. And ultimately, we need to always be, helping others whenever possible. And so what I did is, and the reason why it's become sustainable for me to give back and help others, number one, I enjoy it, but the reason why it became a sustainable part of what I do, not just from the heart, but I try to tie it into something that I enjoy doing. And so the running club that you mentioned there, Running for Bruise, we started that, I think it was back in, 2009 or 2010, and that grew to many locations across the country. And the idea behind that running club was a social running club that, got together once a week and ran at different locations, had a beer afterwards, but ultimately looked to help the community in a variety of different ways, from, canned food drives to, going to the food pantries and volunteering our weekends or our evenings, and just a litany of different things. But I tied it to my love for running and my love for craft beer. And so like that organization, there's a lot of other people that had similar interests to that. And it got legs of its own, and it's grown by leaps and bounds over the last 10 years. The same goes with 72 Hours to Key West. I love cycling. I do a lot of road cycling. And ultimately I wanted to tie a charity and a charitable endeavor around cycling. And I knew that there was many other people that would like to do the same thing. And so every year, myself and 74 other cyclists from all over the country, actually all over the world, we've had people come from Central America, South America, Eastern Europe, and we ride 280 miles over 3 days, starting here on the west coast of Florida, ending in Key West. And each year we feed about 3,000 families over the holidays from that initiative. So I'm tying it to something that I love doing, that I've got a passion for, which is cycling, but ultimately that feeds into the passion for helping others that are less fortunate. So it's a beautiful combination.
Thank you for what you do for that community. And for those who are listening right now and they want to learn about real estate and they're a beginner, or maybe they are a seasoned individual who has been in the industry, but they need a little bit more sharpening skills. You have 2 podcast shows that people can check out. One is the Mobile Park Investing podcast. The other one is Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast. What's some of the investment philosophies that you kind of dive into?
Yeah, so the Real Estate Investing for Cash Flow podcast is all about investing for cash flow, but it's more specific to commercial real estate asset classes. So that show is, I think now we're pushing five, or maybe even more than that, 500 or 600 episodes. But I've been doing it for like 9 years, and 80% of the shows there are me interviewing other experts in different asset classes. So, the normal food groups such as retail, office, industrial, multifamily, interview many, many experts, folks that are both on the development side of things, that are just investors such as ourselves that have accumulated very large portfolios and have been very successful in their targeted niche. So I bring them on the show, but then we dive into some really niche assets. Again, I love contrarian investments. I love parking investments. In fact, that show, one of the interviews is what introduced me to parking investments 5 years ago. I had a guest on the show, and I'd never ever considered parking, and so we got talking about the investment side of the parking industry, and it was very intriguing to me. And so I've got a lot of other niche segments on there, such as that. But really, it's about investing for cash flow, how to find the right asset class in the right market, and basically be able to multiply compound your investment dollars over a period of a couple of years, but not just through appreciation, but through actual cash flow itself, cash flow that you can put into your pocket, cash flow that is spendable today. It's just not being held on a balance sheet, funny money. I call equity in deals, it's funny money, because it's not real until you actually can cash that check and hand it out to your investors or put it into your own pocket. And so we talk a lot about that on that show. And then the Mobile Home Park Investing podcast is just what it sounds like. I mean, we literally talk everything and anything and on all aspects of owning and investing in mobile home parks. And I do not do that show actively any longer. I think there's about 120 episodes that we did, all very relevant even today than what they were, a couple of years ago when we produced that show. But it's up there. You can find it on iTunes and Spotify or wherever else you're downloading your podcast. And so it has a lot of relevant information. If you have an interest in mobile home parks, I definitely suggest you go take a look at that show.
We're talking to our guest today, Kevin Bupp. You can go to his website, sunrisecapitalinvestors.com. Someone listening to this show right now, and they're a seasoned professional in real estate. For you, and with your experience, how do you keep up to date with the industry trends and changes, and how do you use this information to make informed decisions?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think it's almost, how do you not have information overload? I mean, if you're in a particular niche or you're trying to stay up on industry trends in a particular asset class, the information is out there. In fact, there's almost too much of it. And so I think it's really finding the couple sources that you feel are relevant to you, that produce the updates or the news in a way that you enjoy reading or absorbing, whether it be a podcast, whether it be, a weekly blog post, or you're on an email list and they send out kind of a weekly summary of what's going on in XYZ industries. I think it's a pick 3 or 4 or 5 places at the most that you're going to get all your information from, and just literally be consistent with it, and not get into information overload. Because I think there's just way too much out there, Shemaiah, now. Like, it's funny because that really didn't exist 20 years ago. Like, you had to dig. You had to get like monthly subscriptions to magazines, and the information was already old by the time you got it. You had newspapers, and Wall Street Journal is still a very, very relevant and up-to-date place to get your news. And so outside of Wall Street Journal, I go to industry-specific resources. And so I try not to overwhelm myself with too many of them.
And with that said, to make this full circle, people can get even more information that they can start the whole process to either sharpen the skills or find out more about real estate is your book. You have a book that's called The Cash Flow Investor, How to Create Financial Freedom Investing in Commercial Real Estate.
That's right. Absolutely. You can go there. In fact, Shemaiah, if you don't mind, I'd love to give a free copy of the way to your listeners. I mean, you can go grab it at kevinbupp.com/free book, and you can download a free version of that book. It came out not too long ago. We've got the audiobook version of it coming out here in the next month. And it's a culmination of my story and the different paths I've gone down the commercial real estate world, again, investing for cash flow, but then also it's paired together with all the different nuggets of advice and wisdom that I've received over the last 9 years of doing my podcast, over the last 20 years of having multiple different mentors in different industries, and just my information is literally a culmination of everything I've learned from others. And I've tried to take and unpack it in that book for others to learn from.
And this is perfect for someone who is interested in learning more about this whole process of starting from the beginning. And what is one thing that you would stress for people who are making that decision to explore their options to get started? What's the first thing that they should keep in mind?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things. I mean, and obviously there's a lot of readily available information out there. I would say that social media can get it can really blur your brain. I mean, there's on your feed at any given time, if you follow other real estate investors, people are bragging about checks from wholesaling deals, from flipping deals to multifamily investments, what have you. But I'd say pick a lane, pick one of them. You can make money a million and one different ways in real estate, right? There's really no right or wrong. Like you can just make it many different ways. And so pick a lane that you feel is best suited for you, for your personality, and whatever your long-term goals are, and stick with it. Give that particular choice that you've made, give it 12 to 24 months of your dedicated time, of your heart. And I can promise you, and just ignore everything else that you will find success if you just dedicate the time, energy, and effort to that one lane, and just ignore and tune out everything else that's going on in the outside world. And there's no perfect time, Shemaiah. Like seriously, like there's never a perfect time. I see people trying to time the market right now, like waiting for this crash to happen. And I'm not saying that there won't be some type of distress that comes out of it, but like people that are way smarter than you and I and everyone listening to the show have not been successful at timing the market. And I think there's always good deals out there, and good times and bad times. There's always opportunity. It's just, you got to spend that 12 to 24 months if you're getting started. You got to get in there and learn the craft, surround yourself by others that are already doing what you want to do in that specific niche. And I guarantee that you'll find success.
When you look back at your day one, when you started, what was something that really kept you focused throughout your journey as far as hitting your goals and going to the next level?
Yeah, for me, it's very different back then than what it was today. For me, it was very money driven, material. Again, I grew up in a great household. We didn't go without, but we didn't have a lot of extra either. We went on one family vacation a year. My parents got 2 weeks of vacation a year, and a lot of times they didn't even use the second week, right? Because they could get overtime if they went and worked that week. And so, but we never went without. But like it was all relative. We had a happy upbringing, but when I got, we all have these grander visions when we're kids. We see the Ferrari drive out down the road, or we know the neighborhood in your hometown where like that's where all the rich people live, right? Like we had that where I grew up too, and I didn't know any of those rich people, and I couldn't comprehend of how to get there until I met David, until I literally met who became my very first mentor, and I saw this completely different lifestyle. I started meeting people at these investment club meetings that I'd go to with him, and I'm like, I can do this. These people aren't any smarter than I am. This is the pathway to get there. And so, again, the reasoning behind my business has changed a lot over the years, but first and foremost, it was monetarily driven. And I knew that real estate was the vehicle that could take me there. And Shemaiah, I apologize. I forget what the original question was and where I was going with that. So if you could reframe that question, please, because I don't know if I actually answered it or not.
No, you did well. It was just simply if you could, I might have to rephrase it, but it's basically, what did you learn from the very beginning of your journey that kept you focused to help you reach your goals and get to the next level?
So that was it, and a vision, we didn't call it a vision board back then. I don't think that was a thing until like The Secret became, The Secret came out, the movie, I think back in like maybe 08 or 09. But, my mentor, David, told me like, whatever it is, like whatever the reasons are that you're doing this, make sure that you think about that each and every day. And so like I created what is known as a vision board today. And I had all that stuff. I had, boat, I had a beach house. I had, fake dollar bills stuck up there. And like that was my focus for a period of time. Like, and for many years it was, while I was a single young guy, like that seemed to be important to me. Like that's what kept me hungry. But as I got older and got more mature, got married, have children, got involved in a lot of different charitable endeavors, my focus has greatly shifted. I mean, money is important. Money makes things a lot easier in most circumstances, but it's surely not the thing that drives me in my business today.
We've been talking to our guest today, Kevin Bupp. You can go to his website, sunrisecapitalinvestors.com. Man, I want to say again, thanks for taking time. Your schedule. What's the best call to action for our listeners?
Yeah, so you can find me. If you want to learn about our company, you can go over to sunrisecapitalinvestors.com. If you want to check out a little bit more about me and listen to my Real Estate Investment for Cash Flow podcast, you can go over to kevinbupp.com.